Every 4 years, the FIFA World Cup crowns one nation as the champion. But here's the strange part. The biggest winner isn't always the team lifting the trophy. Sometimes, the biggest winner never even steps onto the pitch. Think about it. 32, now 48 national teams fight for football's greatest prize. Millions of fans paint their faces. Billions of people stop everything to watch 90 minutes of pure drama. Players cry. Fans celebrate. History is made. But while the world is busy counting goals, someone else is quietly counting billions of dollars. And those numbers are far more unbelievable than the final score. Hosting a FIFA World Cup sounds like a dream. Imagine your country becoming the center of the sporting universe. The world's cameras are pointed at your cities. Your stadiums are packed. Hotels are full. Tourists are everywhere. It feels like the ultimate jackpot. Until the bill arrives. Because before the first whistle is blown, governments may have already spent billions building stadiums, airports, highways, hotels, railways, and security systems. That's like throwing the world's biggest party, paying for everyone's food, cleaning up after everyone leaves, and then realizing the host made less money than the caterer. Ridiculous? Maybe. But that's exactly why economists have argued about the FIFA World Cup for decades. So who actually gets rich? The host country? The sponsors? The television networks? The players? Or does someone else quietly walk away with the biggest fortune while everyone is watching the football? Today, we're uncovering the hidden economics behind the world's biggest sporting event. Because once you discover where every dollar goes, you may never look at the FIFA World Cup the same way again. Let's do a quick experiment. Close your eyes for just a second and picture the FIFA World Cup. What comes to mind? A last-minute goal? A packed stadium shaking from the roar of thousands of fans? Your favorite player lifting the trophy while millions celebrate across the world? That's exactly what FIFA wants you to remember. But here's the first surprise. Football is only the product you see. Money is the business you don't. And once you realize that, you'll never watch the World Cup the same way again. Think about this. For just 1 month, the World Cup seems to take over the entire planet. Office workers suddenly become football experts. Families plan dinner around kickoff times. Sleep schedules completely disappear. Some people even call in sick. Let's be honest, not because they're ill, but because their national team is playing. And somehow, the boss already knows why. It's one of the few times when the whole world seems to be living on the same schedule. Now here's something even crazier. When the referee blows the opening whistle, that 90-minute match represents years of preparation. Not months, years. In fact, before the first player even steps onto the field, thousands of engineers, architects, construction workers, television producers, security teams, air traffic controllers, hotel managers, and government officials have already spent years preparing for that exact moment. One football match requires an entire country to get ready. Sounds unbelievable? We're only getting started. Because building a World Cup isn't like organizing a sporting event. It's more like building a temporary city. Think about it. Millions of visitors suddenly arrive. They all need flights, hotels, food, transportation, internet, security, hospitals, entertainment, and somehow everything has to work perfectly. No delays, no blackouts, No transportation chaos, no security failures, because the entire world is watching. Now here's the question almost nobody asks. Who pays for all of this? Surely FIFA, the organization making billions from the tournament, must be writing the biggest checks, right? Well, not exactly. And that's where the story takes a very unexpected turn. Because the people making the most money are not always the people spending the most money. We'll come back to that. First, let's talk about the one thing that keeps this entire machine alive: money. More specifically, where billions of dollars actually come from. Because before the World Cup can become the biggest sporting event on Earth, it first has to become one of the greatest businesses ever created. So, where does all the money actually come from? Most people have a simple answer: ticket sales. That sounds reasonable. After all, millions of fans buy tickets, the stadiums are packed, the atmosphere is electric. Surely that's where the real money is. Actually, not even close. In fact, ticket sales aren't even the biggest source of income. They're just one small piece of a much bigger puzzle. The real money starts long before fans even enter the stadium. It begins with something almost every one of us has done: turning on the television. Think about this. A football match lasts just 90 minutes, but broadcasters are willing to pay billions of dollars just for the right to show it. Why? Because attention has become one of the most valuable commodities on Earth. And almost nothing captures attention like the FIFA World Cup. During the tournament, entire countries stop. Families gather in living rooms. Restaurants fill with customers. Bars overflow with supporters. Even people who don't normally watch football suddenly become football fans. That's a dream come true for television networks, because wherever people gather, advertisers follow. And wherever advertisers go, money follows even faster. Here's a crazy comparison. Imagine owning a cinema where every movie breaks the all-time box office record. That's essentially what broadcasters are buying. Not football, attention. And in today's economy, attention is worth billions. But television is only the first engine. The second one may be even more powerful. Take a look around any World Cup stadium. What do you see? Logos. Everywhere. On the advertising boards, behind the interviews, on giant digital screens, inside fan zones, even during trophy presentations. Those logos aren't there by accident. Every single one has paid an enormous price to be seen. Think about companies like Coca-Cola, Adidas, Visa, Hyundai. These brands don't sponsor the World Cup because they love football. They sponsor it because billions of potential customers are watching. Imagine paying one fee and instantly placing your brand in front of almost the entire planet. Traditional advertising can't compete with that. And here's the part most people never notice. You don't even have to buy anything. Simply seeing the same logo over and over again quietly builds trust inside your brain. Psychologists call it the mere exposure effect. The more familiar something feels, the more likely you are to choose it. That's why companies happily spend hundreds of millions of dollars for a few weeks of exposure. Because those few weeks can influence buying decisions for years. Now let's talk about tickets. Yes, they generate a lot of money. Hundreds of thousands of fans travel across the world hoping to witness history. Some spend years saving for a single match. Others purchase luxury hospitality packages costing thousands of dollars. But compared to broadcasting and sponsorships, ticket revenue is surprisingly small. Which sounds strange until you remember one important fact. A stadium can only hold tens of thousands of people. A television broadcast reaches billions. One audience has seats. The other has no limits. And that's exactly why media rights have become so valuable. But wait, the money still hasn't stopped flowing. Walk into any sports store during the World Cup. You'll find official jerseys, scarves, footballs, caps, collectibles, video games, limited edition merchandise. Every product carrying the World Cup name becomes another stream of revenue. Even after the tournament ends, the money keeps coming. People continue buying souvenirs. Collectors hunt rare memorabilia. Fans relive unforgettable moments through documentaries, games, and digital content. The final whistle may end the football, but it doesn't end the business. Which raises another fascinating question. If so many billions are flowing into the World Cup, why do host countries still end up spending enormous amounts of their own money? Where exactly does all that money go? That's where the economics become far more complicated. And that's what we'll uncover next. By now, you might be thinking something. If the World Cup makes so much money, hosting it must be one of the best investments a country can make. It sounds logical. Billions of viewers, millions of tourists, worldwide media attention. What government wouldn't want that? Well, here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Hosting the FIFA World Cup isn't just an opportunity, it's a gamble. And like every gamble, there are winners, there are losers, and sometimes the house wins. Let's start with the biggest expense of all, the stadiums. When people think about the World Cup, these are usually the first thing they imagine. Gigantic arenas, retractable roofs, massive video screens, luxury VIP suites. Everything looks spectacular on television. But what you don't see is the price tag. A modern World Cup stadium can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Some cost well over $1 billion. Now imagine building not just one, but 8, 10, or even 12 of them. Before the tournament even begins, a country may have already spent billions. And here's the uncomfortable question. What happens after the final? Because once the trophy is lifted, the fans leave. The cameras disappear. The world's attention moves on. But the stadiums stay. Some continue hosting football matches and concerts. Others sit almost empty. Maintaining a massive stadium isn't cheap. Electricity, security, repairs, cleaning, staff. Every year, the bills keep coming. Economists even have a name for projects like these. White elephants. Expensive to build, expensive to maintain, but rarely used enough to justify the cost. And the stadiums are only the beginning. Think about everything else a World Cup requires. Airports, highways, railway systems, hotels, communication networks, power grids, security systems, hospitals. Entire neighborhoods are sometimes rebuilt. Millions of passengers must move through airports without chaos. Thousands of buses must arrive on time. Emergency services have to be ready for every possible scenario. For 1 month, an entire country has to operate almost perfectly. Now here's something people rarely think about. None of this happens for free. Much of it is funded by taxpayers, which means ordinary people, many of whom may never attend a single match, help pay for the tournament. That creates a difficult question. Could that money have been spent somewhere else? New schools, more hospitals, affordable housing, public transportation, healthcare, education. It's one of the biggest debates surrounding every World Cup. Supporters argue these investments improve infrastructure for decades, Critics argue the same money could produce far greater benefits elsewhere. So, who's right? The answer isn't as simple as you might think. Because while some countries struggle after hosting the World Cup, others experience something completely different. Tourism increases, foreign investment grows, infrastructure transforms entire cities. So why do some nations succeed, while others are left with debt? The answer has less to do with football, and much more to do with planning. Because the World Cup itself doesn't create wealth. It creates an opportunity. Whether that opportunity becomes billions in long-term economic growth or billions in long-term debt depends entirely on what happens after the fans go home. And that's exactly where our final question begins. If countries take the biggest financial risk, then who walks away with the biggest reward? The answer might not be who you expect. After everything we've uncovered, one question still remains. If host countries spend billions and fans spend billions, then who actually walks away with the biggest fortune? Surprisingly, the answer isn't the country that wins the World Cup. It isn't the team that lifts the trophy. And it isn't even the players. The biggest winner is usually the organization behind the tournament itself. FIFA. Think about it. FIFA doesn't have to build airports. It doesn't construct highways. It doesn't finance metro systems. And in most cases, it isn't the one paying to build the stadiums either. Yet billions of dollars still flow into FIFA through broadcasting rights, commercial partnerships, licensing, hospitality, and countless other revenue streams. It's a fascinating business model. Imagine organizing the world's biggest concert, having someone else build the venue, someone else manage the transportation, someone else provide security, and then collecting a large share of the ticket money. That's an oversimplification, but economically, it's surprisingly close. Now, does that mean FIFA is the only winner? Not at all. Let's talk about another group quietly making billions. The sponsors. Every 4 years, the same global brands return. Coca-Cola, Adidas, Visa, Hyundai. Why? Because the World Cup gives them something that money usually can't buy. Global attention. For 1 month, their logos appear almost everywhere. On the pitch, around the stadium, during interviews, across television broadcasts, inside highlight videos, on social media. Even if viewers aren't consciously paying attention, their brains are. And that's exactly what marketers want. The more often you see a brand, the more familiar it feels. The more familiar it feels, the more likely you are to trust it. That's why companies invest hundreds of millions of dollars just to become official partners. They're not buying advertising. They're buying influence. Now here's another unexpected winner: television broadcasters. At first glance, paying billions for broadcasting rights sounds crazy. Until you realize something. The World Cup delivers audiences that almost no other event can match. A single final can attract hundreds of millions of viewers. Advertisers know this, which means commercial breaks become incredibly valuable. Higher audiences mean higher advertising prices. Higher advertising prices mean bigger profits. And then there are the local businesses. Hotels, restaurants, taxi drivers, airlines, retail stores, tour companies. For many of them, the World Cup becomes the busiest month they've ever experienced. Some businesses earn more during a few weeks than they normally earn in several months. But here's the important difference. Those profits are temporary. The tournament ends, tourists leave, business returns to normal. Which brings us back to the host country. This is where opinions become divided. Supporters point to improved infrastructure, more international recognition, growing tourism, and future investment. Critics point to debt, unused stadiums, budget overruns, and billions that could have been spent elsewhere. Both sides have evidence. Both sides have success stories. And both sides have failures. That's why economists still argue about the World Cup decades later. Because there isn't one answer. There are many. It all depends on one thing. What happens after the final whistle? Did the country build infrastructure people actually need? Or did it build monuments that slowly became empty? That's the difference between a smart investment and a very expensive celebration. Which leaves us with one final question. After following billions of dollars around the world, after seeing the winners, the losers, and the enormous risks, was hosting the FIFA World Cup ever truly worth it? Let's find out. Let's go back to the question we asked at the very beginning. Who really wins the FIFA World Cup? At first, the answer seems obvious. The team that lifts the trophy. The players become legends. The coach enters history. An entire nation celebrates. But economically, that's only half the story. Because while one country celebrates victory on the pitch, another victory has already taken place far away from the stadium. Inside television studios, corporate boardrooms, advertising agencies, and FIFA's headquarters. That's where billions of dollars have already changed hands. And here's the incredible part. The final score doesn't even matter. Whether the match ends 1-0, 3-2, or goes to penalties, the broadcasting contracts have already been signed. The sponsorship money has already been paid. The merchandise has already been sold. The advertisements have already reached billions of viewers. The business succeeds, no matter who wins the football. Think about how extraordinary that is. Imagine producing a movie. Before anyone watches it, you've already sold the streaming rights, the merchandise, the advertising, the sponsorships, and every cinema ticket. Whether the audience loves the movie or hates it, you've already made billions. That's remarkably close to how the World Cup works. Football creates emotion. Emotion creates attention. Attention creates value. And value creates billions of dollars. That's the real product, not the 90 minutes on the pitch, but the billions of eyes watching them. Which explains something many people have wondered for years. Why are countries willing to spend enormous amounts of money just for the chance to host one tournament? Because they're not only competing to organize football matches, they're competing for global attention, for prestige, for tourism, for international influence, for investment, for the opportunity to introduce themselves to billions of people in a single month. Sometimes, that investment transforms an entire nation. Other times, it leaves behind debt, empty stadiums, and promises that never become reality. That's why economists still disagree about whether hosting the World Cup is a brilliant investment or one of the most expensive gambles a government can make. And maybe that's exactly what makes the FIFA World Cup so fascinating. It's two competitions happening at the same time. On the pitch, 22 players chase football immortality. Off the pitch, governments chase economic growth. Corporations chase customers. Broadcasters chase audiences. Sponsors chase global recognition. And FIFA chases something even more valuable: the attention of billions. Because in the 21st century, attention isn't just power. Attention is one of the most valuable currencies on Earth. And no sporting event captures more of it than the FIFA World Cup. So the next time you watch a breathtaking goal or a dramatic penalty shootout, remember, you're not just watching football. You're watching one of the most sophisticated business machines ever created. A tournament where trophies are made of gold, but attention is worth even more. Now we'd love to hear from you. If your country had the opportunity to host the next FIFA World Cup, would you spend billions to make it happen? Or would you invest that money somewhere else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden economics behind the world's biggest industries and events, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the most fascinating stories aren't played on the field. They're hidden behind the money.